Hi, welcome to a new video dedicated to the Boldclash B06. As you already know, I already reviewed it, but I received directly from Boldclash two new ingredient kit to upgrade both the motors as well the flight controller. Now with these new motors, they are spinning at 20,000 kV, so offering a thrust from 23 gram up to 28, so 5 extra gram of power lift multiplied by 4, so close to 20 gram more for the almost the same price, so that's great. And the second ingredient is this new flight controller. This one is now integrating a built-in USB. That's great. So I will show all the content of this box, scale everything, also transfer all the electronic, how to transfer, and you have to know that within 1 or 2 months the B03 will come directly with this element already pre-assembled. It will be much more easy for assembly. Okay, so I will start with the flight controller. This one comes with a bag with some spare O-rings, rubber band to amortize the vibration, the transmitted vibration, as well as some tiny screws, 2 type, one more flat head and one super tiny, depending on what type of machine you want to install, whatever. So here is the board, and first remark, compared to the firmware edition, the gauge of the wire is now much more wider, so it will be able to handle much more amount of current more easily. It's some silicon wires, so that's great, and it's a good point for the eventually some power lost, okay, linked with the thin gauge of the wires. Now you still have the same type of connector, so exactly the same battery can be used. The design is also changed, and I will try to explain. So on the top here, okay, you will be able to find all the video transmitter connection. So if you flip it, you have eventually the name of each port from the ground, the +5 volt, and the video transmitter pin, as well as the camera. Okay, so it's great. And here, okay, the losange here is more for the receiver connection. So we have the ground, the plus the signal here, and we have either the +5 on the right or the +3 on the left. It depends what type of receiver you want to install. Spectrum is 3.3 volt, so you will need to use the left one, and for FirSky with S-Bus more on the right one. For both the FPV connection as well the receiver, I regret maybe the absence of pads, connector. So the pitch is 1.25 millimeters, so you will need, for example, for the I/O connection, 1.25 micro GST 4-position connector, male connector. And here is not in row or column format. Okay, so maybe I regret it, a more classic 4-row, and in this case you can use the same type of connector, and it will be much more easy for an easy plug and play receiver exchange if you want. We still have the main lead connector, as well some 2 pads also if you need, for example, to connect directly your I/O camera. So this pad is possible if you don't want to be dependent of the built-in 0.5 voltage regulator. So we still have some connector to attach the motors. That's great for an easy motor maintenance, okay? And we have the F3, and if we flip, we can recognize the built-in chip of the USD, okay? And all now the FETs are spread among the 2 sides of the board, so it's a completely new redesign. In terms of weight, for example, this board with this improved wire system now weighs about 4 gram one, so close to 1 gram more heavier. Okay, no free lunch, unfortunately. There is an extra chip here and some better wires. In terms of dimension, it's classic. We have a square about something about 28, okay, and in diagonal is exactly something about 36, some stuff like this. Okay, so it will adapt to any flight controller, for example, to any frame width from 65 meters or 75 millimeters. For example, the B06 is 75. So no extra stuff like this. So let's continue with the motors. And this one, as I mentioned previously, are now 20,000 kV, and okay, so they are coming with this 3-position 1mm connector, so even smaller in terms of pitch, and the shaft is the main axis shaft is remains the same with the diameter of 1mm. And as you already know, the first original motors from the B06 was suffering of a kind of some poor durability. The C-clips could pop up very easily, and the motor bell could be ejected after a crash. And here do re-engineering all the system, and it's much more solid, so no real risk to lose the motor bell after some a crash session. Here it's a very good point. More, it's spinning at 20,000 kV, and should boost, as I said, by a factor of 5 grams, so close to 10% the performances of the motor. The motor itself weighs 2 grams, okay, so not so bad. And in terms of this kit, it should boost really the performances and even more be acro compatible. So what I want to do is now to remove all the elements, the former elements, and I will also do the I will reflash firmware of the built-in FirSky XM receiver to offer the RSSI to the OSD. By default, at least with mine, the firmware was not flashed with such kind of features. So now let's do the build log of this new element. Now we detape the built-in receiver, so you have the receiver here, tape directly, okay, and then gently you will need to desolder these 3 wires associated with the S-bus connection. So when they will be desoldered, I will use this small hook to flash the new firmware with a Taranis radio. Okay, will be much more easy. Okay, so let's desolder the FirSky XM. Okay, so now it's time to desolder the actual receiver. So the white wire is the signal one. Okay, so now I will use my hook and connect to the Taranis to flash with the last firmware. Okay, so here is the old board, and in terms of weight is more or less the same. It's 4 gram dot 1 versus the new one. Okay, well, the same amount of weight, that's great, despite the presence of the built-in OSD and the larger gauge. I resolder the broken connector. I hope it will be okay. Well, in fact, I won't use it. And as you can see, I'll pre-install the hook system into the receiver pad, the 3 wires, in order to connect to the Taranis. Let's go to the FirSky download page, retrieve the zip file, and install into the microSD firmware folder the bin file. Okay, here is the flashing procedure. So I install in the microSD card the content of the official OpenTX companion SD card, and I install in the firmware folder the .fr key can be found in the zip file officially downloaded from the FirSky web page. I selected the 8 channel in order to reduce the latency. So I will power the Welcome to OpenTX. Okay, and I will long press this central button, then click on the page, and then thanks to the wheel, select the firmware by pressing this central knock button. Then I will select as you can see, the FCC version, okay, from 2017, and I will click long press this central button, okay. And for the X7S, you have to select the internal module to flash, and after a couple of seconds, if correctly done, okay, I will long press it. To select the external. So this is the internal module. Okay, now it's writing. Okay, maybe my hook system was not super well installed, but it's writing. It would take a couple of seconds. Okay, it's done. So I should now enjoy the RSSI on the last channel. I probably need to rebind with the radio. Well, in order to make the BTX and IO connection, I install some two position 1mm connector. So you have to know that the pitch is in reality 1.25. So I enlarge it a bit, the two pads here, in order to install them on their respective hole. So I will be able to solder them, and then after I will use these two cables like this, okay. And one will be used for the power, and the other one will be used for the V-in and for the video transmitter, and one for the V-out, okay, for the camera. So I will solder first the male connector, and after the female one. Let's go. Okay, the job is done. Now I will, as I said previously, cut this signal wire, the video signal, and then solder this small one, okay, in order to connect to the right connector. Beware with the left one versus this main lead connector. I will reuse. I will need to re-inverse the ground and the +5V, because the +5V is on the most on the left, and if I connect, okay, without, you can see that here now with the original configuration, the VCC is on the right, so I will need to invert, so not replug directly like this without inverting. So I will cut, and I will cut more or less in the middle, okay, of the wires, and then I will need to strip that and to solder this, I don't know, something about 2-3 centimeters like this, and then I will have a detachable IO module with OSD connection. Let's go. So I will resolder. So for me, the red is the input of the video transmitter, so I manage to, and I will solder like this. I will be ready, and don't forget to re-inverse this connector, okay, on the connect, to not cook your video transmitter module. Okay, the work is done. As you can see, I inverted the main lead connector as well. Now I make the cable extension, so the IO module is now removable from the new Whoop core board, okay, so it's pretty easy to plug. It's time to resolder the original FSK flashed recently with the RSSI values on the last channel. So I will use the +5V. So the +5V is this pin completely on the right, and we have the ground on the bottom and the S-bus connection on top. Okay, so let's do pre-install some soldering flux, and then a resolder of the receiver. So I will solder first the ground in the bottom position. should be good. Let's check that. And we are ready to go. And after reinstall, install the new motors, I will remove them. Okay, 3 screws per motors, and then install the new one. So to be sure to not be wrong, I will remove the first motor, so for example the front left, and install a new one. And don't worry about the sense of rotation, you can tune everything through BLHeli configurator. Okay, so I will start with the front left. Just remove these 3 screws. Okay, and let's go. Let's compare the old motors with the new one. So the main default of the older one was the C-clips here was easy to get out, and the motor bell after a few crash was ejected. More as mentioned by Nick, all the magnetic elements, for example, are not regularly even spaces on the tour of the motor. So this small gap here, for example, can introduce a drop of performances. For the new one, as you can see, the magnetic element seems to be more correctly spaced between each other, so more regularly. So and the motor bell ejection is super hard, so no real risk to lose something. Except that, for example, the whole models was something about 2 grams, and the new is 2 grams also, so more or less the same size. Okay, so now it's time to assemble it. You will need to cut the small heat-shrink tube maintaining the cable like this. Okay, so you will have to, but unfortunately you won't be able to reattach any shrink since it's included in the main frame. That's a small drawback. Anyway, let's attach now the first motors. Okay, and continue with the other. And as I say, don't worry about the sense of rotation. Everything can be pre-tuned, configured through BLHeli suits or BLHeli configurator, whatever the program you prefer. Now the 4 motors are reinstalled, and now it's time to replug everything. On the top face, the upside face, you have an arrow. So I will reuse the small amount of tape extracted from the first original board to completely secure the receiver. Okay, so I hope it will tape again, whatever, like this, and reinstall the receiver in its more or less original position, and it should be good. Then reinstall each motor's connector into their corresponding male female connectors. The flight board is now installed. I will reinstall the 2 front screws. Okay, and then I will be ready to reattach the I/O module, because now it can be directly plugged. And we are ready to rebind and test the OSD. Okay, and see the new motor thrust capacity of these upgraded motors. So, okay, it's time to check the default Betaflight configuration for the new board. Okay, so I will connect, and I already did all these changes, so I will show my personal preferences. Gyros accelerometers are here, no barometers, and since we're using FSky XM, you need to turn on the UART2, okay, the serial in for the UART2. In terms of configuration, you can use, we have D-Shot 600 turned on by default, and I push all the frequencies up to 8 kilos for both the gyros and the main PID loop. Okay, turn on the accelerometers, of course. And here is the receiver configuration, serial based receiver, okay, and more particularly an S-bus connection. Since there is no direct cable to the FieldSky XM, the RSSI signal strength is off. And in terms of features, I just turned on the OSD. Okay, so the beeper configuration is set by default. So now let's check the PID tunings, and I kept the default Betaflight 3.2. Okay, and I just increase the rates. Okay, for so small, I would say something about 1000, some stuff like this. Maybe here. Okay, something more faster like this. So I will be able to save, and I will increase as well here. Okay, something like this. So as you can see, about 600 degrees per second for the yaw, and close to 1000 for the pitch and roll. I increase the normal pitch and roll because tiny whoop structure is more resistant to perform flip and roll, so I increase these values. You can see the default anti-gravity gain and then the anti-gravity threshold. So I will save. And now I will turn on the receiver. Okay, and now let's focus on the receiver tab. So for my jumper, the channel mapping starting with Aaron, then elevator and so on, etc. I have all the information more or less centered on the value of 1500. And unfortunately, even if I flashed with the official FieldSky XN with 8 channel, I don't see any RSSI activity. And after reading in some news group, they say that the last firmware is buggy, at least for the 8 channel version. So this can explain why I don't have any. So the trick is maybe to flash the former one, and it should be okay. Whatever I configure correctly or everything, the aux4, which represent the 8th channel. I apply a deadband for both the RC and the yaw. Okay, it's always good. Anyway, in terms of flight mode, I use the switch to harm. Okay, the aux1, and here the aux2 is more for the flight mode. In upper position it's angle, then I will select more acro, and then acro plus anti-gravity. Okay, and I can also add the air mode as well. Okay, for this later, and save it. Okay, so now it should be okay, and I have to select the air mode as well. Okay, so it should be NOx2, and I will save it. Okay, so now in terms of OSD, I had to turn off everything. So first switch off, and I decided to display all this value. The RSSI unfortunately not working, the battery voltage, the throttle input, the flight mode, and the flight time. Okay, and well, the crossbar, very useful. So in terms of Betaflight, everything is configured. I will disconnect, and if you want to fly, you will need also to make some change through BLHeli configurator. So I will connect. Okay, and then you will need to connect your battery to access to the settings. Okay, and I will now press the read setup. And the more important stuff is to reverse the ESC1 and the ESC4, okay, to spin correctly in the right sense. And I also activate the brake and stop, and increase the beep strength to the maximum value, and decrease the beacon delay to 1 minute. So it will be a kind of better for poor, okay, but at least it's ringing more louder. So as you can see, it was my personal preferences, and now it's time to check the default performances in terms of flight. We test in lost condition this new version of the Boldclash B06. I decreased the main PIDs and gyros loop to 4 kilos to be sure to not have crazy freak out behavior. Okay, so let's go. Home. And the machine is is losing his calibration all the time. I need to calibrate. So I will do it right. Okay, we are. Yes, it's punchy for much more power. Yes, so no problem to be acro compatible right now. Wow. But it performs flips without problem. I will disarm, rearm. Yes. Much more powerful. Yes, no problem to be acro compatible, but observe some drift versus time, and in presence of wind, well, the gyros become a little bit crazy. Okay, let's continue more indoors in FPV.